Okay, so you want to own a thrift store. On the surface, it sounds like the easiest business model ever invented. People hand you their old clothes, their old furniture, their old dishes for free. You put a price tag on it, sell it to someone else, and keep the difference. Free inventory, endless supply, almost no risk. It sounds less like a business and more like a magic trick. Take something worth nothing and sell it for something. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Some of the biggest thrift store operations in America aren't scrappy little charity shops barely staying afloat. They're multi-billion-dollar businesses with private jets, sprawling warehouses, and founders who became millionaires off other people's donations. So how does an industry built on used sweaters and chipped coffee mugs turn into a multi-billion-dollar machine? And more importantly, where does all that money actually go? Let's start from the very beginning. Think about a thrift store the way you'd think about a recycling center. A recycling center takes something people don't want anymore, processes it, and sells the raw material back into the economy. A thrift store does almost exactly the same thing, except the raw material is a shirt, a lamp, or a used paperback novel, and the buyer is a person, not a factory. Someone cleans out their closet, drives to a donation bin, and drops off a bag of clothes they haven't worn in 3 years. To them, it feels like decluttering. To the thrift store, it's the beginning of a supply chain. That donation now has to be sorted, priced, displayed, and sold. And every single one of those steps costs the store money, even though the item itself came in for free. This is where the myth starts to crack, because free inventory doesn't mean free business. Think about a restaurant. The ingredients might only cost a few dollars per plate, but that plate still has to be cooked, plated, served, and cleaned up afterward. Labor, rent, and electricity make up most of the actual cost of running that restaurant, not the raw ingredients themselves. A thrift store works almost identically. The clothes might be free, but processing them isn't. Someone has to sort through thousands of donated items every single day, separating what's sellable from what's genuinely just garbage. Someone has to steam wrinkled shirts, price furniture, and stock shelves. And someone has to physically hold that inventory in a building, with rent, insurance, and utilities running every single hour, whether or not a customer walks through the door. According to industry estimates, a well-run thrift operation might only be able to sell somewhere between 30 and 50% of what gets donated. The rest gets recycled as raw textile material, shipped overseas in bulk, or simply thrown away. Which means the real business of thrift isn't really selling used goods. It's sorting through mountains of donated material fast enough to find the stuff actually worth selling. Because the biggest thrift operations in the country aren't run like charity shops at all. They're run like factories, with conveyor belts, timers, and strict quotas for how fast a single item has to move from donation bin to sales floor. Picture an airport baggage system, where thousands of suitcases move through sorting machines every single hour, each one automatically routed to the correct destination based on its tag. Large thrift operations run their donation centers almost the same way, except instead of luggage, it's clothing, books, and household goods, sorted at incredible speed to keep the whole system profitable. Now, let's talk about where the money actually goes, because this is where a lot of people get genuinely surprised. Goodwill Industries, founded in 1902 in Boston by a Methodist minister named Edgar Helms, is the single most recognizable name in American thrift retail. Helms originally collected used goods from wealthier neighborhoods and hired unemployed and low-income workers to repair those goods before selling them back into the community. That original model, training people through work while generating revenue through resale, is still technically the foundation of Goodwill's mission today. Modern Goodwill operations, across their many independently run regional organizations, generate several billion dollars in total annual revenue across the country, according to figures the organization has published in past annual reports. But here's the detail that surprises almost everyone. Goodwill isn't actually one company. It's a network of more than 100 independently operated regional organizations, each running its own stores, its own warehouses, and its own finances, all loosely connected under the same shared brand name. It's less like a single corporation and more like a franchise of nonprofits, each one responsible for surviving on its own. And that independence creates massive differences in how transparent and how profitable individual locations actually are. However, this is where the difficult part of the story begins, because donated goods being free doesn't mean the entire operation qualifies as pure charity. Thrift retail sits inside a strange gray area where a store can be operated by a nonprofit organization, generate substantial revenue, pay executives six-figure salaries, and still be technically compliant with nonprofit law, as long as the profits get reinvested into the organization's stated mission. In 2013, This exact tension exploded into a national controversy. Investigative journalists uncovered that some regional goodwill organizations were legally paying certain disabled workers wages far below the federal minimum wage, using a decades-old provision buried inside the Fair Labor Standards Act, originally intended to help people with disabilities gain job experience. The story sparked outrage across the country, congressional hearings, and public petitions demanding the provision be repealed entirely. It forced an uncomfortable question into the spotlight. If a thrift chain is generating billions of dollars in resale revenue, is paying workers below minimum wage still something you can justify by calling it charity? Goodwill defended the practice as a narrow, optional tool used by a small percentage of locations to create job opportunities for severely disabled individuals who might otherwise struggle to find any employment at all. Critics argued it was an outdated loophole being used to pad the bottom line. That controversy alone reshaped how the public viewed the entire thrift industry and forced many regional Goodwill branches to voluntarily phase out the practice entirely over the following decade. But that's only half the story, because while nonprofits like Goodwill were facing scrutiny over transparency, a very different kind of thrift business was quietly building an empire in the shadows. This is where our second case study comes in. Savers, founded in 1954, operates as a for-profit company, not a nonprofit charity, despite looking almost identical to Goodwill from the outside. Savers partners with nonprofit organizations, purchasing donated goods from them in bulk, then reselling those goods through its own retail stores under various regional names. That structure means Savers can operate more like a traditional retail corporation, complete with private equity ownership, aggressive expansion strategies, and a business model explicitly built around maximizing profit, while the nonprofits it partners with receive a negotiated fee for supplying the donated goods. Today, Savers operates hundreds of stores across the United States, Canada, and Australia, generating well over $1 billion in annual system-wide revenue, according to company statements. It's proof that the thrift industry isn't actually one single business model wearing a charitable mask. It's two completely different economic engines, one nonprofit, one deeply for-profit, both selling the exact same used sweaters and secondhand furniture to the exact same customers, often without those customers ever realizing the difference. It's the same distinction as the one between a family-owned coffee shop and a massive coffee chain occupying the same street corner. Both sell coffee, both look similar from the sidewalk, but the money behind each one flows in completely different directions once the sale is complete. Now comes the difficult part. Understanding why this industry, built on other people's unwanted belongings, has suddenly become one of the fastest-growing corners of retail, because thrift shopping used to carry a certain stigma. For decades, buying used clothing was seen as something people did out of necessity, not choice. That perception has completely reversed. According to industry market research, the global second-hand apparel market has grown dramatically over the past decade, driven largely by younger shoppers, increasingly motivated by sustainability, unique fashion finds, and rising prices in traditional fast fashion retail. Some market analysts project the resale clothing industry could be worth tens of billions of dollars globally within just a few years. Online platforms like ThredUp and Poshmark have taken the exact same core idea, buying used goods cheap, reselling them at a markup, and digitized it entirely, removing the physical thrift store from the equation altogether. It's the same shift that happened to taxis when ride-sharing apps arrived. The core service barely changed, but the platform delivering it was completely reinvented. This is where the real challenge for traditional thrift stores begins, because now they're not just competing against each other for donations. They're competing against apps that let anyone become their own personal thrift store, selling directly out of their bedroom, without ever donating a single item to a shop on Main Street. Which raises an uncomfortable question about the future of that donation bin sitting in your local parking lot. If people can now sell their old clothes directly to strangers online for actual cash instead of a tax receipt, will they keep donating to traditional thrift stores at all? The honest answer is that the industry is already adapting. Many thrift operations have started running their own online resale storefronts, cherry-picking the most valuable donated items to sell digitally at higher prices, while lower-value items still get funneled through their physical stores. So, let's go back to that opening dream. Free inventory, endless supply, almost no risk. The truth is, thrift stores were never really in the business of selling clothes. They were always in the business of sorting through what an entire society decided it no longer wanted, fast enough and smart enough to find the small percentage of it still worth someone else's money.